My name is Nadia Reza. I am 36 years old. And 4 months ago, my parents threw my sister a housewarming party for a house I had never been inside, in a neighborhood I had never been told about, on a street whose name I learned from a Facebook post made by my aunt at 11:30 on a Saturday morning while I was eating cereal alone in a studio apartment I paid for myself. I did not crash the party. I did not call my mother. I did not text my sister. I went to Target. I bought a white ceramic serving bowl with a bamboo lid, the kind that looks like something you register for when you are building a life. I had it wrapped. I wrote a card in my careful handwriting. Sadia, congratulations on your home. I hope it brings you everything you want it to. With love, Nadia. I shipped it to an address I had to look up, because nobody had thought to give it to me. 3 weeks later, my grandmother called me at 7 in the morning on a Tuesday. She never calls before 8. She said 4 words. Come. Bring your folder. I did not know which folder she meant. She had hung up before I could ask. What I found on her dining room table that morning is the reason I am telling you this now. It is the reason I took 3 days off work, which I have not done in 4 years. It is the reason the living room of my parents' house, 6 weeks after that Tuesday, was the most silent room I have ever stood in. Let me show you. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. This is where quiet women tell the loudest stories about family, about what gets taken from you slowly and over time, and about the documents that finally say what you were too careful to say yourself. If this is your first time here, you might want to settle in. I should probably tell you who I am before I tell you what they did. I am Nadia Reza. I am 36 years old, and I am a certified public accountant at a mid-sized firm in Sacramento, California, where I have worked for 9 years and where I arrive every morning at 7:45, which is 45 minutes before I am required to. I have a desk near the window that overlooks a parking structure. I have looked at that parking structure for 9 years, and I do not mind it. I bring my own lunch in a blue insulated bag I bought at a kitchen store on K Street in 2019. I walk to work when it is not raining, which in Sacramento is most of the time. I live in a studio apartment on P Street in Midtown. It is 620 square feet. I have a reading chair I found at an estate sale in Elk Grove on a Sunday afternoon in 2020 and reupholstered in cream linen because the original fabric was the color of something that had given up. I paid for that apartment by myself since I was 27. I have never once called my parents and asked them for money. Not because I did not sometimes need it. Because they had made it clear over many years and in many small ways that money flowed in one direction in our family. And I was not the direction. My family has a word for me. They have used it for as long as I can remember. They call me the practical one. They say it with a kind of warmth that took me a very long time to recognize as relief. They were relieved I was practical. Relieved because it meant they did not have to be practical for me. My sister Sadia is 3 years younger than I am. She has always been, in my mother's words, the sensitive one. I had spent most of my adult life understanding that in my family, practical was the word they used when they meant, she will be fine without it. And sensitive was the word they used when they meant, we had better make sure. I was 32 years old before I understood that those were not descriptions of 2 daughters. They were a budget. Let me take you back, because if you're going to understand the housewarming party, you have to understand the parties before the party, the gifts before the gift, the choices that accumulated for 11 years until they were too heavy to ignore. My college graduation. University of California, Davis, 2011. My parents came.
I want to be fair about this. They came.
My mother wore a blue dress she had bought for the occasion. My father took photographs with a disposable camera he had purchased at a Walgreens the night before. Sadia was 17. She sat between them in the bleachers. After the ceremony, my mother said, "We will do something special for dinner, wherever you want." I chose a restaurant on campus. We were seated and looking at menus when my father's phone rang. It was my uncle with a problem at his dry cleaning business. My father stepped outside. He was gone for 40 minutes. My mother spent the 40 minutes telling me about Sadia's upcoming high school production of Into the Woods, in which Sadia had a small but meaningful role. By the time my father came back, we had ordered appetizers and I had folded my graduation program into eighths and put it in my purse. Sadia's college graduation 4 years later. University of San Francisco, 2015. My parents rented a party room at a restaurant in the Sunset District and invited 42 people. My mother had made a slideshow. There was a custom cake with Sadia's name spelled in gold fondant. My uncle gave a speech. 3 of my aunts cried. I do not hold that against Sadia. I want to say that clearly, and I will say it again later. She did not ask for the party. She received it the way she had always received things, which was with gratitude and without questions about where it came from. My engagement. November 2016. I was with a man named Omar for 4 years. We got engaged in October, and I called my mother on a Sunday afternoon. She said, "Oh, sweetheart, that is wonderful. We will celebrate." We did not celebrate. We did not have dinner. We did not have anything. The following March, Omar and I separated. We had decided quietly and without drama that we wanted different things. I did not tell my family for 2 months. When I finally told my mother, she said, "I always thought he was a bit cold." It was the most she had said about my relationship in 4 years. Sadia's wedding. June 2018. My parents paid for the venue. My parents paid for the catering. My mother's sister flew in from Lahore. There was a mehendi night and a walima and a bridal shower at a hotel in Burlingame with a cheese tower and monogram napkins. I was the maid of honor. I gave a speech I had written and rewritten 6 times, and I meant every word of it. I bought a cream-colored shalwar kameez I had tailored for the occasion. It cost me $420. My father gave a toast at the wedding dinner. He talked about Sadia's kindness, her warmth, the way she had always made home feel like home. He looked at her the way people look at something they are proud to have made. He did not mention me in the toast. Not by name. Not by implication. Not at all. I had a transcript of forgottens. I just had not read it back to myself in order yet. The Tuesday I found out about the housewarming party was an ordinary Tuesday in September. I was in my apartment at 11:30 in the morning because I had worked from home that day on a client filing that needed my full attention. I had made tea. I had a spreadsheet open on my left monitor and a set of documents open on my right. I was eating crackers from a box, and I was perfectly fine. My Aunt Farida, my father's sister, has a public Facebook account because she is the kind of woman who believes the internet is a community. She posted at 11:22 a.m. a photo album. Housewarming for Sadia and Cameron in their beautiful new home, El Dorado Hills. 18 photos. My parents in the backyard. My maternal grandmother, Nanny John, who I will come to shortly, seated in a lawn chair holding a cup of tea. My uncle. 3 cousins. Sadia in a yellow kurta showing someone her kitchen. Cameron grilling something. A cake on the kitchen counter that said New Beginnings in green icing. I zoomed in on the photo of the kitchen. I looked at the cake for a moment. I looked at the kitchen itself. It was large. Cream cabinets. Quartz countertops. A window over the sink that looked out onto a yard. Sadia had been living in a 2-bedroom rental in Folsom with Cameron since their wedding. This was not that apartment. I set my phone down. I finished my tea. I ate 3 more crackers. I returned to my spreadsheet. I worked until 2 o'clock, when I stopped and looked up the address in El Dorado Hills. 4 bedrooms. 2.5 baths. Purchased in August of this year, 1 month prior. Purchase price listed in the county assessor's records, $640,000. I took a screenshot of the assessor's record. I texted it to nobody. I just kept it. I called my mother that evening at 7:15. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Amy, did Sadia and Cameron buy a house?" There was a pause. "Yes, sweetheart. They found something lovely in El Dorado Hills." "When did this happen?" "Oh, it must have been August sometime. They moved in last month." I exhaled quietly through my nose. "Was there a housewarming party on Saturday?" "Yes, it was lovely. Very casual, just family." "I was not there, Amy." A pause. A longer one this time. "Nadia, you know how you are about crowds, and you have been so busy with the Mirza filing." I closed my eyes. I was not busy on Saturday. I was in Sacramento eating cereal. There was a silence. Then she said, "We thought you would need the day to rest." I had heard a version of this sentence many times. I had heard it at graduation in 2011, when she said we will do something special. I had heard it after my engagement when she said we will celebrate. I had heard it for 36 years, each time wrapped in a different logic that amounted to the same thing. We assumed you would be fine without it. I said good night, and I hung up first. I went to a stationery shop on J Street that I had been to before, a small one that stays open until 8 on weekday evenings. I bought a card with a watercolor of olive branches on the front. $7. I wrote in my careful handwriting. I ordered a serving bowl from a shop on Etsy, white ceramic with a bamboo lid, shipped to an address I had to look up because no one had thought to give it to me. $48 plus shipping. I sealed the card. I took the confirmation email. I went to bed. I want you to know that the bowl arrived at Sadia's house on a Friday. I know this because the shipping confirmation said delivered, front door, 2:14 p.m. I did not receive a thank you text. Not that Friday. Not the following Monday. Not for 17 days, when Sadia sent me a voice note that said, "Oh my God, the bowl is beautiful. You always find the best things. Love you so much." Followed by 3 heart emojis. I listened to it once. I did not respond. 3 weeks after the housewarming, I drove to my parents' house in Elk Grove for Sunday lunch. My mother had made biryani. The table was set for 5. My parents, my maternal grandmother who was visiting from Stockton, Sadia, and Cameron. The housewarming was discussed in detail. The yard, the neighbors, the school district. My mother asked Sadia about the kitchen curtains twice. My father said he had already been over twice to help Cameron with something in the garage. He had not told me they had bought a house. He had been to the house twice. I refilled my water glass from the pitcher on the kitchen counter. On the counter, between the bread basket and my mother's phone, sat the olive branch card I had mailed. Unopened. Still sealed. My handwriting visible across the front, Sadia and Cameron. Underneath it, a grocery receipt. I did not say anything. I returned to the table. I finished my biryani. My mother served kheer. I ate the kheer. On the drive home on the 99 South, I turned on the radio. I turned it off after 4 minutes. Somewhere in the back of my chest, a door that I had kept carefully shut for 11 years began, very quietly, to creak. Before I tell you about my grandmother's phone call, I want to tell you about my grandfather because nothing that follows makes sense without him. His name was Muhammad Iqbal Siddiqui. We called him Nana John. He was a civil engineer who had come to California from Lahore in 1979 with a degree from the University of Engineering and Technology and a certainty about structures, about what holds and what is not, that extended, I later understood, well beyond buildings. He bought a property in Stockton in 1984. 2 acres. A main house, a detached guest unit, and a small orchard of almond trees that he had planted himself and which produced, in good years, more almonds than any reasonable family could eat. He retired in 2001. He read engineering journals for pleasure. He had a workshop in the garage where he built furniture that was precise to the millimeter and completely beautiful. When I was 17, I started spending weekends at his house. My grandmother was alive then, my Nanny John, who is the other person I need to tell you about, and will. Nana John and I would sit on the back porch in the evening, and he would ask me what I was reading. He was the only adult in my family who asked me that. I told him once I wanted to study accounting, and he said very seriously, "Nadia, numbers are the language of what is actually true. Everything else in life is negotiation. Learn to read them, and you will always know where you stand." In 2012, he was diagnosed with a progressive neurological condition. He had 5 years if things went well. Things went reasonably well. He held on until 2017. I drove to Stockton every other weekend for 4 years. I did his insurance paperwork. I organized his tax files. I read to him from engineering journals when his vision made it difficult. Sadia came at Eid. She brought her boyfriend, later her husband. She was warm and she kissed his cheek and she cried when she left, which my mother said showed how deeply she felt things. I did not cry when I left. I went home and opened his filing system and made sure everything was in order for the following month. At his funeral in March of 2017, my mother leaned over to me at the graveside and said, very quietly, "Nadia, will you sit with your grandmother? She needs someone steady." I sat with Nanny John. Sadia sat between my parents. My mother held Sadia's hand. My grandmother held mine. Nanny John is 78 years old. She lives alone in the main house on the Stockton property, which is the house my grandfather built his life around. She does not drive anymore, but she does not complain about it either. She has a neighbor named Mrs. Petrosian, who takes her to appointments. She makes chai on the stove the way she has always made it, with cardamom and a piece of ginger. She has a cat named Iqbal, after my grandfather, which she will tell you is not sentimental. It is simply the correct name for a gray cat. She calls me 4 or 5 times a year. She does not call for small talk. She calls when there is something to say. The call came on a Tuesday morning in October. I was at my desk at 7:48. I had just logged in and had not yet opened my emails. The screen lit up. Nanny John. I picked up quickly because I always pick up quickly for her. Nanny.
Nadia.
Come. Bring your folder. I sat up straighter in my chair. Nanny, are you all right? Come before noon. Come alone. Don't tell your parents you are coming. Nanny, what folder? What is? She had already ended the call. I sat at my desk for approximately 90 seconds. I looked at my monitor. I looked at my phone. I typed one email to my supervisor that said Family Matter, working remotely this morning, and I closed my laptop and put it in my bag, and I left. The drive from Sacramento to Stockton on Route 99 South takes about an hour on a good morning. It was a good morning. The valley was flat and gold, and the sky was the particular cloudless blue that October makes in the Central Valley. I passed almond orchards on both sides of the highway. Harvested already, branches bare. My grandfather had loved October. I spent the drive running through possibilities. My grandmother's health. Something with the property. Something she had found. Something she had remembered. I rehearsed faces for each one. I am a CPA. I rehearse for everything. Numbers, documents, conversations. You do not want to be surprised by something you could have anticipated. I pulled into the driveway of the Stockton property at 9:51. The almond trees were bare and neat. The workshop in the garage had its door closed the way my grandfather always kept it. The main house had the blinds half open the way my grandmother always kept them. She opened the door before I knocked. She was in a white cotton shalwar and her gray cardigan, the one she wears when she has a long morning planned. She had chai already made. I could smell cardamom from the doorway.
Come in. Sit.
I followed her into the dining room. The table was set with 2 cups. The chai was in a small pot with a cloth cover to keep it warm. She poured without asking. She did not sit immediately. She went to the sideboard along the wall, old walnut wood. My grandfather had made it in 2003, and she opened the second drawer from the top, and she took out something I had not seen before. A manila envelope. Legal size. Cream-colored. Aged at the edges. Sealed with a metal clasp. On the front, written in my grandfather's careful English, for Nadia. When the time is right. She set it on the table between us. She sat down across from me. She wrapped her hands around her chai cup the way she does when something requires steadiness. Nanny, what is this? She said it the way she says everything important, without decoration. Your grandfather prepared this 3 months before he died. He gave it to me himself. He said, Vivian, he always called me by my given name when he was being precise. He said, Vivian, give this to Nadia when you are certain she is ready. Not before. I looked at the envelope. I looked at her. Why now? Because I watched your aunt's Facebook photographs from your sister's housewarming. I watched your mother and your father and your uncles standing in a garden that was bought with money that belonged to your grandfather's granddaughters equally. And your face was not in a single photograph. And I thought, he would have stood up from that table and said something. So I am saying it instead. Her chai cup was steady. Her hands were not shaking. My grandmother is not a woman who shakes. Before you open it, she said, I need to tell you one thing. Whatever is inside is already yours. Your grandfather made sure of it. But once you know, you cannot go back to not knowing. So, open it when you are ready. I picked up my chai. I drank a slow sip. I set it down. I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a single page, handwritten on my grandfather's engineering graph paper, in his precise blue ink. At the top, Property distribution note, Muhammad Iqbal Siddiqui, January 2017. Below it, in numbered paragraphs, a statement of his intentions regarding the Stockton property and the family savings account held at Central Valley Bank, account number ending in 4409. I read the first paragraph. He had intended the property, the main house, the guest unit, the 2 acres, the almond orchard, to pass equally to both of his granddaughters. Nadia Reza, 1/2. Sadia Reza, 1/2. His estate attorney had drawn up the instrument. It had been signed. It had been notarized in San Joaquin County on January 9, 2017. The second document was the signed estate instrument itself. 4 pages. My grandfather's signature at the bottom of each page in the same blue ink. Witnessed by my grandmother and by a man named Gerald Osei, who I did not know. Notarized. A seal I recognized because I work in financial documents. Legitimate, complete, executed correctly. The third document was a letter. 3 pages in my grandfather's handwriting.
Nadia.
If you are reading this, your grandmother has decided it is time. She is a careful woman, and she has waited for the right reason. Whatever her reason is, trust it. I read slowly. I read the part where he told me he had watched me for 20 years, the way I moved through the family, the way I handled difficulty without announcing it. He wrote, "You have always been the one they called practical. I want you to know I knew what that word cost you." I read the part where he explained that he had prepared the instrument quietly, without telling my parents, because he had not trusted what would happen if they knew. He wrote, "Your father is a good man who loves your mother more than he loves what is right. And your mother loves Sadia the way she knows how, which, sometimes, leaves no room for the other." And then I came to the paragraph in the middle of the second page. He had written, "I know they will tell themselves it was fair. They will tell themselves you did not need it. That you were practical. That you would be fine. This is the story people tell themselves when they take from someone who does not protest. It is not the truth. The truth is in this envelope. I have tried to make sure the truth survives me." I set the letter down on top of the instrument very carefully. "Nanny, why was this never filed?" She nodded once. She had been waiting for that question. "Your father came to this house the week after the janazah. He said he needed to collect some of your grandfather's papers for the estate process. I was not well. I let him take the folder from the office. The folder had the unsigned working draft that Gerald had left for your grandfather's records. Your father came back the following week and said the estate had been settled simply and that everything was in order. I did not ask what order. I was grieving and he is my son-in-law, and I trusted him." She paused. 8 months later, I found this envelope in the dining room sideboard where your grandfather had put it before he went to the hospital for the last time. I read what was inside. I understood what your father had done. I understood what it meant. She slid something across the table. A small folded paper. Gerald Osei, estate attorney, Stockton, California. An address. A phone number. I called Gerald in 2018. He told me the instrument had been properly executed and filed in his firm's records. He told me a copy of it was in a sealed file at his office. He told me your father had contacted him after the janazah and told him the family had decided to handle the estate informally and that no probate was needed. Gerald told me that was not correct. That an instrument of this kind required probate to take effect. That without it, the property would pass under California intestate succession rules to your mother as a surviving child.
Which is what happened.
I held the letter in my hands. I did not move for a moment. The property transferred to your mother 6 months after your grandfather died. She transferred the guest unit and half the acreage to Sadia and Cameron as a gift 18 months after that. The almond orchard was sold to a developer in 2020. The main house remains in your mother's name, with your grandmother living in it under an informal arrangement that has never been documented. And the savings account. My grandmother looked at her chai cup. Account 4,409. Your grandfather had saved $87,000 over 40 years of careful living. It was to be split equally between both granddaughters. Your mother was listed as co-trustee for administrative purposes only. What happened to it? Sadia's MBA. University of San Francisco, 2015 to 2017. Tuition and fees, $61,000. Paid from account 4,409 in 3 installments. I have the transfer records. Gerald obtained them for me. I sat with that for what was probably 30 seconds. The remaining balance? $26,000, transferred to a joint account your parents hold, described in the bank's records as family household funds. Over the following 3 years, I looked at my grandmother. She looked back at me. The cat, Iqbal, walked into the dining room from somewhere, assessed the situation, and walked back out. Nanny, why did you wait until now to tell me? Because when your grandfather died, I was not ready. Because for a long time I told myself the right moment would come naturally. Because your father is my son-in-law, and your mother is his wife, and I did not want to break what could not be put back together.
She paused.
I was wrong about the right moment. It does not come on its own. You have to decide it has arrived. She placed her hand flat on the letter. Whatever you decide to do, I will sign whatever needs signing. Gerald has kept everything. He told me, when he sent me his records in 2018, Mrs. Siddiqui, your husband was a careful man. He made sure the truth was documented. I have been paying the file storage fee for 7 years. $14 a month. $117 a year. Some things are worth keeping. I picked up the estate instrument. I held it. I left my grandmother's house at 12:38. I hugged her at the door. She did not say, I love you. She said, call me when you have decided. Drive on the 99, not the 5. The 5 has construction. I buckled the manila envelope into the passenger seat. I do not entirely know why. Perhaps because it was the most significant document I had ever held in my own hands, and it seemed wrong to put it in the trunk. I drove north on the 99. The almond orchards passed on both sides. The sky was still blue. The valley was still flat. I was not thinking about my mother. I was not thinking about Sadia. I was not rehearsing what I would say. I was thinking about California intestate succession law. I was thinking about the timeline. Grandfather died March 2017. Property transferred to mother September 2017. Transferred in part to Sadia, March 2019. I was thinking about the California statute of limitations on breach of fiduciary duty, which is 4 years from the date of discovery. I was thinking that today was the first day of discovery. I was thinking about what a properly executed and filed testamentary instrument is worth in a California probate court. I was thinking about one sentence my grandfather had written. The truth is in this envelope. I have tried to make sure the truth survives me. By the time I passed Elk Grove on the 99, I had composed 3 sentences in my mind. The first was, I need an estate attorney who has never met my parents. The second was, I need Gerald Osei's complete file. The third was, I am not going to raise my voice once. I arrived home at 2:14. I put the manila envelope on my kitchen table. I made tea. I opened my laptop. The first thing I did was pull up the San Joaquin County Assessor's records. I have a subscription through my firm. I entered the Stockton property address. The title history rolled down the screen. 1984 to 2017, Muhammad Iqbal Siddiqui, sole owner. September 2017, transferred to Amina Reza by affidavit of succession, small estate procedure. The affidavit listed the decedent as having died without a will or testamentary instrument known to affiant. The affiant was my mother. She had signed a sworn statement in a California probate court that my grandfather had died without a testamentary instrument. She signed it 6 months after my grandfather had prepared one. She signed it in a county office on a form that cost $12 to file. I read the line about no will or testamentary instrument known to affiant twice. I opened a second tab. I searched for the California Penal Code section on perjury in a sworn court filing. I read it carefully. I am a CPA. I read things carefully. Then I opened a spreadsheet. I have always loved spreadsheets. They are the polite way my brain processes information it does not yet know what to do with. Column A, date. Column B, transaction or event. Column C, amount. Column D, source document. Column E, corresponding beneficiary. By 4:30, I had 22 rows. Row 1, March 2017. Grandfather dies. Property value, $480,000 per 2017 Zillow estimate. Account 4409 balance, $87,000. Row 6, September 2017. Property transferred to Amina Reza by false affidavit. Consideration, $0. Row 9, October 2017 through January 2018. Account 4409 withdrawals, $61,000 to University of San Francisco bursar, 3 installments. Memo, Sadia Reza tuition. Row 14, March 2019. Guest unit and 0.8 acres transferred from Amina Reza to Sadia Reza and Cameron Malik by grant deed. Consideration, $1. Row 18, August 2020. Almond orchard, 0.6 acres, sold to Castellan Development Group. Sale price, $94,000. Proceeds, family account. Row 22, August 2024. Sadia and Cameron purchased property in El Dorado Hills. Purchase price, $640,000. Down payment source, unknown. Pending. I sat back in my chair. Outside my window, the parking structure was lit by the afternoon sun. A man was walking to his car on the 3rd level. He had a paper coffee cup, and he was looking at his phone.
Ordinary.
Everything outside that window was completely ordinary. At 4:55, I called Central Valley Bank's fiduciary services line. I gave them account number 4409. I gave them my grandfather's full name and date of death. I said I was the granddaughter of the account holder and the named beneficiary of an estate instrument, and that I would be following up with documentation from the estate's attorney of record within the week. I asked for the complete withdrawal history. The woman on the phone hesitated. I said, I have a copy of the executed instrument naming me as co-beneficiary. The affiant who filed the succession affidavit omitted the existence of this instrument in a sworn court filing. I am requesting this information as part of an inquiry that will involve the probate court. She asked me to hold. I was on hold for 11 minutes. She returned and told me she was transferring me to the estate compliance officer. The withdrawal history arrived in my email at 5:48. I opened it. I read it. I closed my laptop. I put on my coat. I walked 4 blocks to a wine bar on K Street. I ordered a glass of Barbera d'Asti, and I sat at the bar, and I looked at the wall, which had some kind of abstract print on it that I did not examine closely. Then I took out my phone, and I called a woman named Patricia Lim. Patricia Lim is 44 years old and runs a 2-partner estate and probate firm out of an office on Capitol Mall in Sacramento. I had met her at a Sacramento Estate Planning Council event in 2022. She had given me her card and said, in the way of someone who has said a version of this many times, CPAs make the best estate clients. They never bring me incomplete records. She picked up on the second ring. Patricia. Nadia Reza. I need 2 hours of your time tomorrow morning. It is going to require your full attention. 8 a.m. or 10.
8.
I sat in her conference room at 7:55 the next morning. I had the manila envelope in a tote bag. I laid the documents on her table in the order I had decided the night before, the estate instrument first, then the affidavit of succession, then the county title records, then the bank withdrawal history, then the spreadsheet. She read for 31 minutes. She took notes in a yellow legal pad. She set her pen down slowly when she reached the university tuition withdrawals.
Nadia.
The instrument is properly executed.
Yes.
And the affidavit filed in San Joaquin County directly contradicts its existence.
Yes.
She closed the withdrawal history. She looked at me. This is not a misunderstanding. A sworn affidavit in a probate proceeding that omits a known testamentary instrument is fraud on the court. In California, that is also perjury. The statute of limitations on the civil claim runs from discovery. Your clock started yesterday. I know. She picked up her pen again. Tell me in one sentence what your mother said to you when you asked why you were not invited to the housewarming party. I looked at the table. We thought you would need the day to rest. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Nadia, your mother said that to you last month. Your grandfather had a document prepared 7 years ago that said the opposite. He knew you would need the rest of it. The house, the savings, the land. He prepared for that. And someone made sure you would never find it on your own. I did not respond to that. I did not have a response yet that I trusted. She told me what we were going to do. File a petition in Sacramento and San Joaquin probate courts jointly. Subpoena Central Valley Bank for the complete account history. Contact Gerald Osei for his firm's copy of the instrument and his records of the 2017 communication with my father. Retain a forensic accountant to trace the El Dorado Hills down payment. Do it quietly. Do it in order. Do it once correctly. Do not contact your parents until we are ready, she said. Do not contact your sister. Do not contact the bank again. I said, I know. I am a CPA. I understand the value of not moving before you are ready. She smiled. She said, Gerald Osei is still in Stockton?
Yes.
I have opposing counsel experience with his firm. He is careful. His records will be clean. I drove to Stockton that afternoon. Gerald Osei had his office on Pacific Avenue, a small suite on the second floor of a building that also housed an insurance broker and a Filipino restaurant that smelled like garlic from the stairwell. He was 61 years old with a handshake that meant he had been taking things seriously for a long time. He led me to his conference room. He had already pulled the file. The sealed copy of the instrument was there. Same 4 pages, same blue ink, same notary seal. A second folder held his correspondence with my grandfather from January 2017. 3 letters confirming the instrument had been executed and filed in the firm's archive. A 4th letter, dated April 2017, addressed to my father, acknowledging Mr. Reyes's inquiry about the estate and noting that Gerald had advised him that any informal estate resolution would not supersede a properly executed testamentary instrument of record. My father had known. He had contacted the attorney. The attorney had told him the instrument existed and that it could not simply be ignored. He had filed the affidavit anyway. Gerald photographed everything for Patricia's files. He gave me his direct line. He said, Your grandfather told me, when we signed the instrument, that he trusted me to keep it safe because he was not certain his family would. I told him I would. I keep my word. I drove back to Sacramento on the 99. The valley was dark by the time I crossed back into Sacramento County. I had the manila envelope on the passenger seat. The next 6 weeks were quiet in the way preparation is always quiet when you are doing it correctly. I went to work every morning at 7:45. I closed 2 client audits. I submitted a quarterly report that my supervisor called the cleanest she had seen this year, which was not, I knew, because I was feeling clean. It was because I have always done my best work when I need something to be exactly right. Patricia filed the petition in Sacramento Probate Court on a Thursday in November, under seal. She contacted the San Joaquin Court the same week. She subpoenaed Central Valley Bank. She drove to Stockton to take my grandmother's formal affidavit on a Wednesday morning, accompanied by a court reporter. My grandmother, she told me afterward, had been completely composed and had served chai. A forensic accountant traced the El Dorado Hills down payment to a wire transfer from my parents' joint account in July of this year, funded by the proceeds of the almond orchard sale and a partial liquidation of the remaining family savings. He had it documented in 11 pages on his firm's letterhead by the first week of December. Patricia called me on a Thursday morning and said, Nadia, we are ready. I said, I want to do it on a Sunday, specifically the Sunday before the end of the month. She said, any particular reason? I said, my grandfather died on a Sunday. He would have appreciated the symmetry. On a Tuesday afternoon, I sent the text. It went to my father, with a blind copy to my mother's number, because I was not certain she would be with him when he read it.
Baba.
I would like to come by on Sunday at 2 o'clock. I have something related to the family estate I need to discuss in person. Please ensure Amy, Sadia, Cameron, and Nanny John are present. I would also ask that Fuppy Farida be there if she is available.
I set my phone face down on my desk.
I opened the Mirza client file. I worked for 2 hours. My father called at 4:43. I picked up on the second ring. Nadia, what is this about? What estate? I would prefer to discuss it in person on Sunday. Is this about your grandfather's house? Because your mother and I. Sunday at 2, Baba. He paused. A long one. Then, Of course. Of course, Beta. Sunday at 2. He hung up. 7 minutes later, Sadia texted me. Hey, just checking in, you okay? What's going on? 3 question marks. 4 heart emojis. I did not respond. My Aunt Farida, I later learned from my grandmother, called my mother at 9:30 that evening. My mother told her, in a voice my aunt described as very controlled, that Nadia was having one of her quiet episodes and would Farida please come Sunday and help keep things calm. My aunt said she would. My aunt told me later she had known something was wrong since the almond orchard was sold and nobody had mentioned it to me. Before I tell you about Sunday, I want to say something about my sister. Sadia is 33 years old. She has a communications degree and an MBA and a husband who manages a restaurant and is doing, I think, his honest best. She has always been warm in the way some people are warm, which is generously and without examining the cost. She did not know, when she moved into the guest unit in Stockton in 2019, that the property had been signed over to our mother by a sworn statement that omitted a document my grandfather had prepared for both of us. She was told it was a family gift. She accepted it the way she had been raised to accept things, which was with gratitude and with the assumption that the adults in the room had handled the details correctly. I do not blame Sadia for not asking when she was 25 and newly married and grateful. I do not blame her for not asking at 28. I think of her MBA, paid for by my grandfather's savings without her knowing it was his savings, and I feel something that is not exactly anger. It is more like a particular sadness for the specific version of the story she had been given to live in. But there is an age at which not asking becomes its own kind of answer. She had been to Stockton. She had signed documents. She had accepted a house for $1. She was 33 years old. At 33, you know that things do not simply appear. If you have ever been the practical one in your family, the one they described as capable so they could feel comfortable leaving you behind, I see you. Stay with me. Sunday is almost here. The envelope is already in my briefcase. Drop a comment with one word for what it feels like to open something that was always yours. Then subscribe so you don't miss what happened when I set it on my parents' table. Saturday night. I laid out my clothes. Black trousers. A white blouse with small pearl buttons that I had bought for a deposition in 2021 and worn to every important professional meeting since, because it is the outfit in which I do not have to think about what I am wearing. Wearing the same thing means one less decision. I have learned this about myself. I made oatmeal on Saturday morning and ate it at the table looking at the reading chair. Sunday morning, I made chai on the stove the way my grandmother had taught me, with cardamom and a piece of fresh ginger. I drank it standing at my kitchen window. Then I opened my briefcase on the kitchen table, and I went through it one final time. The estate instrument. For pages, notarized, my grandfather's signature and my grandmother's, Gerald Osei's witnessing signature, the San Joaquin County Notary seal. My grandfather's letter to me. 3 pages, handwritten. The original was in the sealed file at Gerald's office. This was a photocopy, but every word was the same. The San Joaquin County title records for the Stockton property. 7 pages, highlighted in 4 places. The 2017 affidavit. The 2019 grant deed to Sadia. The 2020 almond orchard sale. The current title showing my mother's name on the main house. The Central Valley Bank withdrawal history. 8 pages, tabbed. The forensic accountant's summary report. 11 pages on his firm's letterhead. My grandmother's notarized affidavit. 3 pages. The correspondence from Gerald Osei to my father, April 2017, advising him of the instrument's existence. 1 page. Patricia Lim's card. Face up, on top of everything. The manila envelope. Empty now. I had emptied it the previous evening and placed it in the briefcase as its own kind of statement. The empty space was the point. I closed the briefcase. I put on my coat. The manila envelope rode in the passenger seat. I buckled it in. Patricia had texted at 7:30. Standing by. Call if you need anything before 2. You have done the work. Trust the documents. I pulled into my parents' driveway in Elk Grove at 1:58. For cars besides my father's. My mother's. Sadia's white Hyundai. Cameron's gray pickup. And, on the street, A car I recognized as my grandmother's neighbor Mrs. Petrosian's blue Civic, which meant my grandmother had already arrived. Also on the street, Fuppy Farida's maroon Corolla. She had come. I sat in my car for 40 seconds. I picked up the manila envelope from the passenger seat. I took the briefcase from the back seat. I walked to the front door. I knocked. I had not knocked at my parents' front door in 23 years. I had always come in. Today I knocked. My mother answered. She was in her good camise, the teal one with the embroidery. She had makeup on, which is unusual for a Sunday at home. She smiled at me the way she smiles when she is managing a situation she has not yet fully assessed. Nadia, Beta, why are you knocking?
Come in.
Hi, Amy. I stepped inside. I did not kiss her cheek. I walked past her into the living room. Everyone was already seated. My father in his chair, Sadia on the sofa next to Cameron, Fuppy Farida in the chair by the window, my grandmother on the other end of the sofa, straight-backed, her gray cardigan, her hands in her lap, Iqbal presumably at home. A tea tray on the coffee table, untouched. I set the briefcase on the coffee table next to the tea tray. I set the manila envelope next to it. I did not sit down. The room was immediately still. My mother's eyes went to the envelope. She recognized the cream color, the aged edges, my grandfather's handwriting on the front. She put one hand on the back of the armchair nearest her.
Nadia.
What is that? It's Nana John's envelope, Amy. He prepared it in January of 2017. Nanny John kept it until October. My father set down his tea. He looked at the envelope. He looked at my mother. He looked at the envelope again. My grandmother said, from her end of the sofa, without preamble, I kept it for 7 years. I should have given it sooner. I am giving it now. I opened the briefcase. I had rehearsed the order 12 times over 2 days. I did not deviate. I took out the estate instrument. I placed it on the coffee table in front of my father, who was closest. This is the instrument your Nana John prepared 3 months before he died. For pages, notarized in San Joaquin County, January 9, 2017. Witnessed by Nanny John and by Gerald Osei, his estate attorney. It directs that the Stockton property and savings account 4409 pass equally to both of his granddaughters. I took out the San Joaquin title records. These are the county records for the Stockton property. In September 2017, 6 months after Nana John died, the property was transferred to Amy by affidavit of succession. The affidavit states that the deceased died without a will or testamentary instrument known to the affiant. The affiant is Amy. I placed the affidavit printout on top of the title records. I took out Gerald Osei's letter to my father, April 2017. This is a letter from Gerald Osei to Baba, dated 1 month before the affidavit was filed. Gerald advised Baba that the instrument existed and that it could not be superseded by an informal estate resolution. Sadia's voice came first. It was thin, almost a question.
Amy.
What is the instrument? What does this mean? My mother did not look at Sadia. She was looking at the title records. I took out the bank withdrawal history. This is the withdrawal history for account 4409. Balance at Nana John's death, $87,000. Withdrawals in 2015 through 2017, $61,000 to the University of San Francisco bursar's office in 3 installments. Sadia's MBA. Sadia made a sound. Not a word.
A breath.
Cameron put his hand on her arm. She looked at him. He said nothing. I took out the forensic accountant's summary. This is a forensic accountant's report tracing the remaining funds and the down payment on the El Dorado Hills property purchased in August of this year. I will not read all of it. The conclusion is on the first page. I set it down. My mother spoke then. Her voice was controlled. She said, "Your grandfather wanted us to take care of the family. He told me before he died."
Amy.
He told Gerald Osei in writing in January 2017 what he wanted. I have 4 pages of it. She looked at the instrument. She said, "He was not well. He did not understand what he was." My grandmother said, very quietly from her end of the sofa. I watched him sign it. He was clear. He was present. He knew every word. My mother turned to look at her mother. Something crossed her face that I did not have a name for. Then she looked at me. After everything I have done for this family, after every sacrifice, every year of, I said it the way she had said it to me. The same cadence, the same quiet.
We thought you would need the day to rest.
The room went entirely silent. My phone vibrated in my blazer pocket. I took it out. I accepted the FaceTime. Patricia Lim's face on the screen. I held it up so the room could see her. She said her name, her firm's name, her bar number. She said, "A petition has been filed in Sacramento Probate Court and San Joaquin Probate Court under seal this week. Notice will be served at this address by certified mail within the next 3 business days. Mrs. Reza, you will want to contact an attorney today." My mother stared at the screen. She said, "You're taking me to court." I said, "I'm asking the court to recognize a document your father prepared. There is a difference." My father had not spoken. He had been looking at his hands since I had placed Gerald's letter on the table. His hands that had built a bookshelf in our living room when I was 12 and had helped Cameron with something in his garage twice in the month since they bought the El Dorado Hills house. He looked up.
Nadia. Baba.
He did not look at my mother. He looked at the instrument on the table. I read the letter Gerald sent me. In 2017, I told your mother we should file it. She said it would break the family. She said you were doing well, that you were settled, that you had your job and your apartment and you did not need. My mother said sharply, "Richard." He did not look at her.
He looked at me.
I should have made sure it was filed.
I am sorry.
I looked at him for what was probably 5 seconds. "I know you are sorry, Baba. I need you to also know that you watched for 7 years. You came to Sadia's house twice this month. You sat at this table for 7 years. I needed you to make sure." He nodded. He did not argue. Men who have done something they cannot undo sometimes have the grace to stop arguing about it. My grandmother said from her end of the sofa, "Amina,
call your lawyer today."
My mother sat down. She looked at the empty manila envelope on the coffee table. She looked at it for a long time. I closed my briefcase. I picked up the envelope. I put on my coat. 4 months later, in the second week of March, the Sacramento and San Joaquin probate courts entered a joint judgment. The estate instrument was admitted to probate. The 2017 affidavit of succession was vacated. The Stockton property was ordered transferred equally between myself and my sister. Sadia was given 120 days to complete a buyout of my share or to list the main house for sale. She chose the buyout. She and Cameron refinanced. I received a wire transfer on a Wednesday morning in May that I did not look at for 2 hours. The El Dorado Hills house remained with Sadia and Cameron. The court declined to unwind it on grounds that a bona fide purchase had occurred and that the equitable remedy was adequately addressed by the Stockton resolution. Patricia had anticipated this. I had accepted it before we filed. My mother was referred to the San Joaquin County District Attorney's Office for review of the 2017 affidavit. The DA opened an inquiry. I was told the timeline was uncertain. I did not follow it closely. That is a thing that is moving and I do not need to manage it. My parents were ordered to repay $44,000 from account 4409 in traced personal withdrawals. Their attorney argued the MBA disbursements could not be practically reversed.
Patricia accepted that.
What she did not accept was the household withdrawals. Fuppy Farida stopped returning my mother's calls in February. She has called me twice since then. The first time she said, "I always thought something was not right about the orchard sale." The second time she said, "Your grandfather would have been proud of how you did this." Sadia sent me a letter in April. 6 pages, handwritten. I have read it 3 times. I have not responded.
I have not decided what I want to say.
I think I am waiting to understand what I feel, which takes me longer than most things. My grandmother and I have dinner on the first Sunday of every month. She makes the same biryani every time. We talk about her garden. She has started growing tomatoes this year, which is optimistic for someone in her late 70s and which I find, in a way I cannot entirely explain, very moving. I moved into the Stockton property on the 3rd Saturday of June. I did not keep much from the studio apartment on P Street. The reading chair came with me. The estate sale chair in cream linen. It looked right in the main house's living room, against the wall where my grandfather had kept a bookshelf he had built himself. I kept the bookshelf. On the last day in the studio, I took the card I had written to Sadia in September, the olive branch card she had never opened, which my grandmother had quietly recovered from my parents' kitchen counter at a family dinner in November and brought to me without being asked. I held it in my hands for a moment. I read my own handwriting on the front. Then I put it through the shredder. I had meant every word. That was the only reason to shred it. Some things are only true once. The workshop in the garage had been locked since my grandfather's death. I had the key from my grandmother. I opened it on my first morning there. The workbench was still clean, which was how he kept it. His tools were still in their places. There was a length of walnut wood on the lower shelf, cut and ready, that he had been preparing for something he had not finished. I do not know what he intended to make. I have been teaching myself from his engineering notebooks, which were in the second drawer of the workbench, labeled by year. I am not fast. I am not skilled. I have made 2 mistakes that required starting over. But the workshop smells like sawdust and linseed oil, and it is very quiet in the morning before the valley heats up. The manila envelope sits on the dining room sideboard, empty. The same sideboard my grandfather built in 2003 from plans he drew himself. The envelope is in the second drawer, where my grandmother kept it for 7 years. The empty space in it is, I have decided, the correct thing to display. It held what it needed to hold. Now it holds only the fact that it did. It is October now. A year from the housewarming I was not invited to. I am sitting on the back porch of the house on the Stockton property. There are almond trees still standing along the eastern fence line, the ones the developer did not take. My grandfather planted them in 1988. They are bare now, this time of year. They will produce something in the spring. My grandmother is coming for dinner tonight. She is bringing biryani in a pot she will carry in her lap in Mrs. Petrosian's blue Civic. Gerald Osei sent me a note last month. 2 sentences on his firm's letterhead. Your grandfather told me in January of 2017 that the most important thing he could do was make sure the right person got the right thing. I believe he was correct. I have been thinking about something my grandfather said to me on this porch when I was 17, the summer before I started studying for university. He said, Nadia, numbers are the language of what is actually true. Everything else in life is negotiation. Learn to read them, and you will always know where you stand. He was almost right. Numbers are part of the language of what is actually true, but so are documents. And so, it turns out, are the people who keep them safe for 7 years in a sideboard drawer and call you on a Tuesday morning and say 4 words.
Come.
Bring your folder. Being called the practical one was never a description of who I am. It was a permission slip they wrote for themselves, to give me less without guilt and to call it knowing me. The day I stopped accepting that permission, I did not have to be loud. I did not have to be angry. I had to be what I had always been. Careful with documents, precise with numbers, and willing to open something that had been waiting. I brought my folder. I opened the envelope. I let my grandfather's words say what I had spent 36 years being too practical to say for myself. That is my story. A manila envelope. 7 years. For words on a Tuesday morning. And what they finally answered. If you have ever been the one they called practical, the one they assumed would be fine, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below.
Subscribe.
And I will see you in the next one.